So obviously you know what has happened, just as everybody else has found out what has happened. The appeal has been refused. She cannot come back to this country. She's effectively stateless, or she has the option to go to Bangladesh, but she doesn't want to exercise, saying she might face the death penalty there. What are your thoughts about the position vis-a-vis revoking citizenship? Is this something that has precedent, that is done, that you can do?
Yes, it can be done. There's provision for it. There's law for it. And in certain grounds, the government can revoke citizenship if they deem it's in the UK's interest to do that. Now, there's no definition of that. So the only people who can define that are the government. If it's against national security, as what they've done in this case, or if the citizenship was fraudulently obtained, then they can revoke that citizenship. So there's precedent for it. It has happened. Shamima's not the only one it's happening to, or has it happened to. And, they can do that. However, it has to be fair. And United Nations say it must not render somebody stateless. So that person, it usually happens to people who have got dual citizenship. In this case, however, the case is that Shamima isn't a Bangladeshi national. The government claims she's eligible to claim citizenship, but that is not the same thing as being a citizen. So a lot of British people are eligible to claim Irish nationality, and a lot of Australians are eligible to claim British nationality. But that doesn't mean they're British nationals or Irish nationals. It just means that they can apply. There's a process. Ireland and Australia will consider whether they are. And Bangladesh has already said if they don't consider Shamima a Bangladeshi national, if she does come to Bangladesh, that they'll hang her. So obviously it's not desirable for her to go there. But I think the essential thing about today's ruling is that it looks like the government have presented some evidence to the judge, which probably cannot be disclosed due to security reasons, which has swayed the judge's mind in relation to, she's a serious national security threat.
And let's just say this is the evidence that Sajid Javid saw in the first place that led him to make the decision to render her stateless. And we think it's very probably the same confidential evidence that has swayed the judge this time. Do you have, obviously I know this is pure speculation. I get that you haven't seen it, neither have I. We don't know what's contained within it. But what sort of thing do you imagine, given all your knowledge and experience of this kind of scenario, could it possibly be, do you think? I won't hold you to this. I know you don't know. But what could it be? What could it be?
The disclaimer is I don't know. But if we were to have a guess, if we were to use an example, then I would say it might be information on secrets, about ISIS. It might be being a party to murders or some sort of torture.
Right.
But once again, we don't know. But it's got to be severe in the fact that the judge thought, well, hold on. This is a girl who's not Bangladeshi, hasn't been to Bangladesh, wasn't born there, born and bred in the UK, but poses such a threat that we can't even let her come here, go to a jail here. Because a lot of people think that letting Shamima back in would mean she'd just walk through, roam free, be on the streets. That isn't the case. Even if we had her back, she'd end up in a jail and she'd end up on trial and probably a good few years until a later stages in life be in prison.
Right.
As a lot of terrorists are. Shamima's argument was, well, hold on, I should be tried in the UK for my crimes, just like IRA terrorists are. So we have a lot of IRA terrorists who are Irish and eligible for Irish citizenship, but we hold them in the UK and they're tried in the UK for their crimes against the UK. So Shamima was saying, all right, if you're going to incarcerate me or put me in jail, then it should be in the UK. Don't leave me without a country to go to in a refugee camp. That was the whole crux of the argument. And that was saying what taking away her citizenship is doing. However, and the government, have clearly won their case and saying they're right in doing so. And the judge must have thought, well, hold on, she is eligible to apply for Bangladeshi nationality. Let her try her luck there.
I'll just give you some lines from the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, who says she welcomed the court's decision. This is what she had to say. My priority is and always will be the safety and security of the UK. I am pleased with the decision from the court today, who have agreed with the government's position on every appeal ground, which would seem to underline your suspicion that whatever the confidential information is pretty dramatic, pretty conclusive, and must pertain to something really major, because otherwise we probably know what it is, or it wouldn't have been sufficient to sway the judge. So what are your feelings, Harjap, about this? Do you feel that this is probably the right way forward, that she isn't allowed back into this country? Or do you feel that revoking citizenship and having this kind of fairly sort of spurious argument that she could theoretically go to Bangladesh where they might just hang her isn't compelling enough? Where do you stand on this?
It needs to be defined. What's in the UK's national interests? So we have a former Prime Minister who's born in New York. If it turns out that what he was doing or his government were doing is fraudulent, as has been alleged by some people in relation to PPE contracts, I don't think that's working into the national's interest. Can we deport him back to America? Can we deport Suella Braverman because her parents weren't born here? What about Priti Patel? What about Sajid Javid? Their parents weren't born here. So what's the definition of working in the UK's national interests? That's what it's got to be. This is national security. This is clearly a bit more defined than that. But we've got to be clear on our grounds before we start stripping people of citizenship. And then it should be fair across the whole board. Why, if, let's say, for example, is someone like Rolf Harris not been stripped of citizenship and sent back? Surely he's a big threat to children standing outside schools and openly admitting to what he's being found of guilty of several offences. Why isn't it all across the board? Surely if we believe in a fair and equal justice system, it should apply to everybody equally, right? Not as opposed to where someone's born and bred.
But how, Harjap, would it apply if the person who did it was not only born in this country, but had parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, all born in this country? So there was no suggestion of any likelihood of any dual citizenship, nothing of the kind. Everybody had been born and bred in Britain, on British soil. Then what would happen? Can you still revoke citizenship even then?
Well, no, because you'd effectively make them stateless. So hence now we have a two-tier citizen system. So citizens whose parents weren't born here, they can be deprived of their citizenship. Citizens whose parents and grandparents weren't born here, they have to be tried and sentenced here. And, you know, they can't be stripped of their citizenships.
I mean, Harjap, there's likely to be. I mean, I can't predict because everybody's individual. I can't say in advance of callers what they're going to say. How can I? But I would imagine that there will be a sizable number of calls from people who say, my God, you know, she wanted effectively to bring this country to its knees or destroy it. She wanted to fly in the face of all Western liberty, freedom, free speech, you know, and you know, champion a regime of you know, barbarism and terrorism. Therefore, she's not somebody we want back in this country. She is a threat to our security, and we also don't want the expense of housing her in prison, and we don't want to have to go through an expensive trial either, which would be funded by us and the state. So really, best place for her, Syrian camp, let her stay there. I think we may have a really goodly proportion of calls saying exactly that. Of course, we may not. If callers ring me and say that, what would your response to their calls be?
I totally agree with that. And I think that anyone who's working against the interests of this country shouldn't be here. I don't want to live next door to them, and I wouldn't want you to live next door to them. But I can use the same argument for pedophiles. I don't want to house them either and pay for them to be housed. I don't want a penny spent on them. I don't want them in this country. Mass murderers. You know, the Moors murderer, the murderers at Dr. Fred West and Rose West, and I don't want these people.
But is the difference?
Harold Shipman. I don't want these people.
But is the difference, without in any way, of course, wishing to minimise the damage and the death and destruction that these people wrought? Of course, I don't minimise it. It was appalling. But is the difference that they were targeting individuals, and Shamima Begum was effectively trying to target our entire country, our whole raison d'etre, the whole of Western civilization? It's a very different motivation. If you're a paedophile, of course it's appalling for those children on whom you prey. If you're Harold Shipman, of course it's appalling for those patients that you kill. But it's individuals. It's not a kind of ideological hatred or warfare, and it's not against our whole nation. So it's not national security that's at stake. It's the security, safety and lives of individuals, which are hugely important, but it's not the same. Would it be fair to say that?
No, but I would say, well, look at the facts. Did Shamima physically kill anyone? We have no evidence.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know exactly, but we do know that the aforementioned killed people. One of them was nicknamed Dr. Death. Yeah, that does not sound like an individual I want in the UK or want anywhere in my communities. I don't even want them sort of people in prison. Right? And there's a lot of your callers will say, well, actually, those people should be hanged and we should bring back the death sentence for them sort of people. And that's a totally different argument altogether, right? So the fact is, let's have law, but let it apply equally. No one's saying release Shamima Begum. No one has said that. No one's saying bring her in and let her be open. In fact, we should have got her and extracted all of the information the government needs to make sure this doesn't happen again, that no one is groomed online again and no one is allowed out. And remember, there are a lot of elements to this story. There's a Canadian double agent involved here.
I know.
Actually to cross the border.
Just as quickly as you can, Harjap, in a couple of lines, if you can do it. Just summarise the input into this story of the Canadian double agent, because this is one of those you couldn't make it up things, isn't it? Just very quickly tell people how there's a Canadian double agent involved.
There's a Canadian double agent who actually helped traffic Shamima from here